Hola guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Roxanne. If it's your first time here, then welcome. Today I wanted to do sort of an impromptu video with regards to books that have helped me become more socially aware and socially conscious, that have propelled me to try and become more involved, that have helped to educate me. And I've been wanting to do something like this for a long time, but the reason that it is now sort of more impromptu and not as planned as I had hoped it would be is in response to what's been happening in Charlottesville, what's been happening in the past like 2 weeks or so, and what has actually just been happening since the beginning of the history of this country. I have been seeing a lot of tweets and sentiments that this is not who we are, but I think this is both false and ignorant. It is who we are, it is who we have been, and all you need to do is look into a history book to see that that is who this country is and what we are. It's not what we have to be, that's for certain, but I think that that requires self-awareness and awareness of the context and the locations and the history in which you're involved. And I think a lot of people try not to do that, and it's very uncomfortable to do that. It's very uncomfortable to realize that there are many things that you have to unlearn. I think it's very uncomfortable to realize that you may have been part of systems of oppression. And there's nothing wrong with taking a step back and just realizing it and starting at that point. I mean, we're all in different stages of learning. You know, not all of us have always been educated, not all of us have always been aware. So I don't like to use terms like, oh, where were you when this happened, or where were you when this was going on, because there was a time when I wasn't there. You know, there was a time when you weren't there or she wasn't there. And so I don't like to use that. What I like to do is, okay, so what are you going to do now? Now that you've realized what's going on, now that you've realized how badly things need to change, what are you going to do from this point on? And so this is a video that is quick and just sort of a starting point. I hope to expand from this and grow, and I'm looking for suggestions or questions, things to address. I would like this to be as interactive as possible and for you guys to help me as well. So what I did, I just looked through very quickly through my bookshelves and picked up some books that I think will help me or have helped me, and a couple that I haven't finished or haven't read and that I think will help me. And I thought I would share those with you guys as starting points, and from here we can all grow, because we all should. And so these are just books that have helped me, I guess, fight the supremacy, fight white supremacy, and fight the patriarchy. So yeah, I mean, let's get right into it. One that is very small but impacted me a lot, and which I've talked about multiple times here, and which I'm sure is not going to be new to any or most of you, and that is We Should All Be Feminists by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I first heard of her and listened to her and what she had to say in her TED Talk, which is the transcribed version of her TED Talk. It's an essay about exactly what it says: why we should all be feminists, why does it matter, what is it? And it impacted me a lot because I had already sort of started in that path, and I think I've talked about this before. So one of my best friends had suggested that I read Full Frontal Feminism by Jessica Valenti, and this was the first and only sort of feminist book that I had read until then, and it's a very starting point sort of book, and I think it was good. I haven't read it since then, so I haven't read it since I learned to look for other things, so I don't know how inclusive it is and any of that, but this was my starting point. And so I don't even know where I came across the TED Talk, but I just pressed play for whatever reason. I think I was actually supposed to be doing homework and looking for any reason to avoid it, and I listened to it, and it changed my life. And from then on, I've wanted to read more and learn more and be more involved, and I've done that, and it has helped me a lot. And so I definitely couldn't do this without mentioning that. Another feminist book is Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. I think Roxane Gay is an immensely important voice in the community. She's a fat black feminist woman who stands for everything that she is and tries to progress anyone in that community and in that world, and anyone that can progress with her progression. So I think she's an incredibly important voice. I think she's great. If you want to follow her on Twitter, I think you should, because she's hilarious, and she'll go one-on-one with idiots that try her online. So this is a book about learning to accept your imperfections in the community, and in your activism, and in who you are as a person. That it's okay to enjoy frivolous things, that it's okay to enjoy problematic things, as long as you understand why they are what they are, why they are frivolous, why they are problematic, and what role they play in your life, and in your activism, and in your way of being, and in your way of thinking. And it talks about why women shouldn't be perfect or strive to be perfect. We should be holding ourselves within our imperfections, but still strive to be better, and to do better, and to help others in any way that we can. And this was very touching for me personally, and it's a very popular book. She now has, I believe, 2 other bestsellers currently in the bestseller list that I think she published this year, and I think that's Hunger and Difficult Women. And I have unfortunately not read those yet, but I do plan on reading them. I have this one by her, which is nonfiction, and then I also have an Untamed State by her, which is a fiction story, but which I think is actually another very important read. So maybe I'll suggest this one as well. This is about a woman who goes back to Haiti to visit her family, and she is kidnapped. And it's about her situation, her ordeal, how her family deals with it, what the socioeconomic situation in Haiti is, why things are the way they are. It touches on a lot of different things, relationships, how people deal, how men deal with women who have gone through things like this. And I think it's very poignant, and it's a very difficult read, so keep that in mind. It can be very triggering, keep that in mind as well. But I loved this book very much. I think it's important, and I think it's good that we are reading stories like this and publishing stories like this. We need to do more of that, obviously. But she is, I'm pretty sure she is from Haiti, like her family is. So she comes from an area of understanding, and I think that's very good. That's an Own Voices story there. Another one that I read back in high school, and I do want to reread at some point, is Puerto Rico, The Trials of the Oldest Colony in the World. And I think this is just a very small kind of zoning in on colonies that still exist and how they're treated. And I think this is a good starting point from then broadening your horizon and looking into colonialism and the colonies that still exist, and how they've been affected by big powers of the world, how the United States has affected islands like Puerto Rico, or how France has affected Haiti and things like that. I think this is a good, from here you can go on, or from any other books that you have started, also try this one. It's from a Puerto Rican scholar and someone who was involved in the US government, so it's a very good sort of historical overview with some sort of personal insight also thrown in there. So I used this for a paper that I had to write back in high school, and I want to reread it because I just haven't read it in like 4 or 5 years. So there's this one. Malcolm X, An Autobiography. I think this one is sort of does not need an explanation. I think most of you know who he is and what he stands for, what he stood for, and what still stands for, because his image hasn't ceased to have an effect in the youth and in the people who have been involved in civil rights and in social movements. And so I recommend this one for sure. I love this. It's one of my favorite nonfiction books of all time. And then another one that doesn't really need much of an explanation is The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness by Michelle Alexander. You can also see her in the documentary 13, I believe, on Netflix, which I have yet to watch, but I've heard is really, really good. And it's about this, essentially. It's about mass incarceration. It's about how it affects men of color, black and brown men especially. So yeah, I think this is a very important book. This is one of these books that I think I'll kind of go back to over and over again. Because it's so important. And I think it's one of these that every time I reread it, I'll find something else to sort of learn and focus on, and then go from there. This is a good sort of book that you should have in your starting kit, I guess, of books if you want to be more involved and more aware. It is very important. Again, it's not an easy read by any means, and she does, one of the things that I actually really enjoyed is how in the beginning of the book she tells you exactly what she means to do with this book, and she tells you the shortcomings of the book as well. She focuses on men, and she said that she wishes that at some point someone will discuss this, maybe her at some point, or someone else, another scholar, will also discuss this from the perspective of how it affects women, just other genders other than men, and families, and another perspective on this topic, because it's something that we need to address and we need to be knowledgeable on. And then two that I haven't read, but that I definitely intend to read. They both come from Haymarket Books, which is a non-profit publisher. You should check them out. They usually have really good sales going on, kind of like buy one, get one, or like everything is 50% off, things like that. So I bought last year and I haven't been able to read just yet, but I definitely intend to. It's called Undivided Right, Women of Color Organized for Reproductive Justice. Now, I volunteered with Planned Parenthood. I have donated to organizations that strive to provide women with autonomy over their bodies and choice over what to do with their bodies. And so this is something that really sort of called out to me when I saw it in their shop, in their book selection. I haven't read it yet, but I think it's going to be one of those books that really touches me, that's really important, and that'll open my eyes to a lot of different things. I am a woman of color who strives to do as much as she can for reproductive justice. It's something that is very near and dear to my heart, and so I plan to read this at some point very soon, and I have very little doubt that it will live up to every expectation that I have. So check it out, and check out Haymarket Books. I actually reached out to them and they sent me No One is Illegal, Fighting Racism and State Violence in the U.S.-Mexican Border by Justin Akers Chacon and Mike Davis. So this is exactly what it talks about. I'm sure you guys have probably seen it before. I had seen it a lot before I decided to pick it up. And immigration is a topic that we need to discuss. It's something that affects us in this country every single day. And obviously, I want to clarify that I am speaking from a U.S. perspective, because that's where I live. That's where I've lived the majority of my life. Also in Puerto Rico, which is technically the U.S., but in my head they're a little separate. There are a lot of other books about and from the perspective of a lot of other nations. I know there have been a lot of books coming out lately from the UK and all of that. So, and I want to read more books about colorism within the Latinx community as well. So if you guys have any suggestions on that, please let me know. But yes, this is a book that talks about, I'm sure we'll talk about exactly what it says in the title. I haven't read it yet, but this is another one that I intend to get to very soon. And I'm sure this is, again, not gonna be an easy read, but one that I think everyone should read, because I think a lot of us misunderstand immigration, or it's difficult for us to put ourselves in their perspective and in their shoes. Oh, another one that I've been reading and I think will be helpful is Open Veins of Latin America. Actually, you probably read this one and then read this one and then see the irony and the sadness in seeing how a lot of the people that immigrate to the United States from Latin America come from countries that have been destroyed in many ways by many of the actions taken by the American government. And so it's so sad that they should come here looking for aid and for help in the country that might have had a lot to do with why they need to leave in the first place. So this one talks about that, and then probably read this one, which is what I think I'll do. Another one that talks about that, it's a fiction book, but it's a beautiful book and one that I think everyone should read, and it's The Book of Unknown Americans, a novel by Cristina Enriquez. It's an own voices book, and it talks about immigration, immigrant families, where they go, where they live together, what they do, what their everyday lives are. And so, yeah. Also, this is by no means supposed to be a whole list. There was the word I'm trying to think of, but I intend to go a lot further than this and talk about books that affect other different types of communities. I'm looking for books, especially nonfiction, but I guess fiction as well, that talk about the LGBTQIA community. If it talks about the community of color within that community, that would be great. And yeah, I mean, this is by no means going to be the end of this. So yeah, I intend to do more of these videos and be as inclusive as I can be in every video. And if you want to see something included that isn't, then please let me know so that I can read up on it and talk about it and suggest some more books. Oh, one that I actually want to read, which I've actually heard is really, really good. It is Mundo Cruel by Luis Negron. This is a collection of short stories. I think it's mostly about gay men in Puerto Rico, but I'm pretty sure its own voices, and within it, it'll discuss a lot of the homophobic nature of the Puerto Rican culture, and which also is reflective of the homophobic nature of Latinx communities and many communities of color. So I intend to read this pretty soon. It's very, very short, and I've heard really, really good things about it. So this one, I'm sure, will do that as well. But yeah, I mean, I'll look for those from women's perspective or from transgender individuals' perspective, because I think that would be great. Oh, actually, there is a book that I want to read that talks about that I think it talks about transgender individuals in Puerto Rico, and I think it's a fiction book, but I think it comes from the perspective of someone who worked with them and was involved in that community a lot. It's from a Puerto Rican female author. This was a video meant to educate, inspire, and be a starting point, because I had my starting point, and I have had many starting points since then, as I learn to be more intersectional, as I learn to learn more, and as I learn to be more open-minded and sort of shut up and listen to what other people are saying, right? So this is what this was meant to be, and I hope that it will help many people. If you have any suggestions for books that I should read, please leave them down below. I'm always looking for them. Any books that I read in the future, I'll probably bring up in a future video, because I intend to probably do this pretty often, or as often as I can, as I take in more books and content. I might do documentaries and TV shows, whatever I come across. But yeah, let's stop white supremacy and let's stop patriarchy together. As always, I love and appreciate you guys very, very much. Stay safe, please. A lot of shit's going on in the streets, so stay safe, stay aware. Check in with those you love and tell them that you love them.